So chapter 4, section 2, paragraph 9, that starts the ultimate reason why learning is perceived as frightening. Okay, great lead off, eh? All right. So last week in this section, it was talking about that change means learning, and learning means change. If you want to experience something new and different in any given situation, that change comes only through learning. Only learning is change. And then we talked about why it is that there is a part of us that resists change as if it is death itself. There is a part of us that you may recognize that would rather die and be miserable than change, which means learn a new way, learn a new thought. Does anybody know about that part of themselves? Rather than commit myself to learning a new way of looking at this, a new way of perceiving, I would rather just suffer. I would rather just be miserable. There is a part of us that fears change like we fear death. And it says that the reason that we fear change so much is that we fear learning, because if you begin the process of learning, I want to learn a new way, I want to learn a new way of thinking, I want to learn a new and higher reality about myself, that decision and that desire always leads to the relinquishment of your ego. If you say, I'd like to learn a new way, I want to see this a different way, what can I lose by asking? Eventually, it will always lead you to the point where you go, what do I want the ego for? That thing didn't guide me right. It was what made me miserable. But the ego sees that as destruction. The ego sees you relinquishing your ego, going, I don't need that anymore, that wasn't helpful. The ego sees that as destruction. The ego sees that as death. And so the ego does everything it can to make sure that learning a new way of thinking is the last thing that you do, even if it means staying miserable for a lot longer. Okay, so that's what we were talking about last week, okay? And now we're just going to pick back up again in the same thing. And it says, it's explaining our resistance to learning, okay? And then we were saying last week also that to whatever extent you are experiencing something that you are struggling with, and it's a struggle, and it's painful, and to whatever extent you are not taking the attitude of, I need to learn something new here. I need to learn something new here. And you go, to whatever extent you resist that approach, to that extent you want to continue to suffer. For some reason, you're still getting some juice out of it, right? That's the only reason why we wouldn't go, oh, I would like another way of seeing this. I would like another way of perceiving this, right? That's our resistance. So it says, if you believe that if you allow no change to enter into your ego or this problem, your soul will find peace. Well, I believe if I allow no change to enter into my ego, my soul will find peace. This profound confusion is possible only if one maintains that the same thought system can stand on two foundations. But nothing can reach the soul from the ego, and nothing from the soul can strengthen the ego or reduce the conflict within it. I'm going to skip forward because I already read that last week, I forgot. Now paragraph 9. That's weird, I went to paragraph 8. The ultimate reason why learning is perceived as frightening is because learning does lead to the relinquishment, not the destruction of the ego. To what? To the light of the soul. That's the ultimate reason why learning or change is perceived as frightening. This change, your ego must fear, because the ego does not share my cherry, says our teacher. My lesson was like yours, and because I learned it, I can teach it. And then our teacher says, I never attack your egos. Hear our teachers say that. Don't worry, don't fear that your ego, when you express it, is going to be attacked. So our teacher says, I never attack your egos, but what I do is try to teach you how your ego's thought system arose. So when you bring when you expose your ego to the light of the soul, when you expose your ego to the light of your soul, your teacher will not judge you or attack you. Your teacher will just say, let's just talk about how this came to be. Let's just talk about how that arose. That's all. That's all. And we're like, oh, I don't want to expose my ego. I don't want to expose my ego. I don't want to admit. I don't want to admit. But that's all our teacher does. Says, oh, let me just tell you how this came about. That's all. That's all it does. Then it says, this is very important, our teacher says, when I remind you of your true creation, your egos cannot but with respond to fear. When our teachers tell us about the truth about ourselves, our egos cannot but respond with fear. Wow, that explains a lot, doesn't it? It's interesting. Explains why we experience so much resistance sometimes to, number one, hearing the truth, or when we are sharing the truth, experience resistance. Wow. It's interesting. It's a miracle that anybody reads this book. It's a miracle that anybody comes to a class like this. Because the ego can't hear this and not respond with fear. You know, so that explains why it is that we have resistance to the truth. You know, and it should help us to have compassion on whatever part of us resists the truth. Whatever part of us resists learning when we're in crisis, right? This is what helps us to have compassion. Of course, my ego has that resistance. What else is my ego going to have about hearing the truth? Okay. Then it says, but teaching and learning are your greatest strengths now. Why? Why are teaching and learning your greatest strengths now? If you are going through a crisis, if you are going through a challenge, if you are going through a struggle, your greatest strength right now, your best bet, your best friend is going to be teaching and learning. Interesting. You want to get out of this jam? Teaching and learning. What's going to help you through this? Teaching and learning. Okay, now he's going to talk to us about what teaching and learning really means. Now he says the reason why teaching and learning are going to be your greatest strengths now to get you through this jam is because you must change your mind. That's interesting. I must change my mind. How bossy. You must change your mind. And why is it that we must change our minds, teacher? Because you must help others change theirs. Okay, that's interesting. It's interesting to hear our teacher saying, you've got to change your mind. You need to focus on teaching and learning right now. In other words, you need to focus on change and learning and change. Those are your greatest strengths right now. And you've got to, because others need you too. Isn't that interesting? So apparently our changing of our mind and our learning and our teaching, apparently we're in a time right now where that is crucial, where that's the biggest need that we all share as a collective soul. You know, the world needs you. The world needs your teaching, the world needs your learning, and it needs it bad. And because of that, you must change your mind. Wow. I did not realize, or sometimes I forget, how crucial the planet needs that of me. And I forget, and I think, oh, well, who needs my learning? Who needs my peace? You know what? I mean, the world is so colossally messed up. I mean, you know, what could I do? But apparently our teacher is saying you've got to change your mind right now. You need to be teaching and learning and having that as your goal. And that's your greatest strengths, because you've got to change your mind, because you've got to help others change theirs. It's the only way this world's going to make it, is you. Wow. And then it says, it is pointless to refuse to tolerate change just because you believe that you can demonstrate that by doing so, refusing to tolerate change, that the ego has not occurred. Okay, so what is it pointless to do? It's pointless to believe, it's pointless to refuse to tolerate change. So isn't that interesting? You got to tolerate change. It's hard to tolerate change, isn't it? It is for the ego. So here it is, he's saying it's pointless to refuse to change your mind just because you believe that if you don't work on changing your mind, you can pretend you don't have a problem. I don't want to learn. I don't want to work at teaching and learning. I don't want to do that learning, teaching, change work because I don't want to admit I have a problem. I don't want to look at it. Anybody relate to that? You know, I don't need to read the course or do that work. I don't need to do the work of changing my mind. I don't need to change my mind. I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem. You see, we're doing something pointless. We are resisting change, which means learning, because we don't want to look at the fact that we got a problem. You know, if I look at the course, I realize I got a problem. I don't want to do that. And so I'm going to resist change because I don't want to even see that I've got really wrong thoughts going on in there, right? It's interesting that he says that's how and why we resist change. That's how we resist hearing new and higher and better thoughts that would lead to change. Wow. So I'll say it again. It's pointless to refuse to tolerate change just because you believe you can demonstrate that by doing so, this problem has not occurred. I don't have a problem. Have you ever felt that way? Has anybody had that resistance to reading course because once they looked at it, they would see how insane they've been? I have that resistance. Sometimes I just have a resistance. I don't want to open up the course and see just how friggin' insane I really am. Especially when I'm upset or angry. I really don't want to see how insane I am in those moments. Wow. So I'm refusing to tolerate change so that I can pointlessly demonstrate that I don't have a problem. I don't have an ego. Because I don't want to look at it. That's our approach. Okay. So then it says, the dreamer who doubts the reality of his dream while he is still dreaming is not really healing the level split, which means the split mind. In other words, you have dreamed of a separated ego. You have dreamed of a crazy ego. You have. All right. And you have believed in a world that rests upon it. And this is very real to you. And you can't undo this crazy ego that you've dreamed up by doing nothing, which means not changing. Wow. Whew. So he says, you know, while you still believe in your ego, don't waste time trying to pretend that you don't. You obviously do. And stop pretending that the ego is not very real to you, right? He says, so denying that you have an ego while you obviously still do, pointless, pointless. And that's not going to help you in this jam. It's not going to help you out. Wow. And I love it how he says, you know, you cannot undo your insane ego by what? By doing nothing. I know that's been my problem-solving approach. I got a crazy ego. I know what I'm going to do. I'll just see it outside of me and do nothing. And focus on what everybody else should change instead of what I need to change. Interesting. So what is it in your life that you're trying to undo by not changing? What is it in your life that you're trying to undo by doing nothing? Except running away from it. Wow. Plenty. Just plenty. In any way I'm trying to problem solve by not changing is just me attempting to try to keep that problem and make it bigger. Because that fits my story of being the victim. Wow. So may changing my mind, which means teaching and learning, be my one problem-solving approach to whatever I am struggling with right now. Let that be my one approach. What must I change? What must I change here? What must I change? Right? What thoughts must I change? What beliefs must I change in this situation to get me out of it? Wow. And unless you are doing that, you are doing nothing. But tolerating, but refusing to tolerate change. Whew. Wow.
So we don't do anything except that we're motivated to do so. I mean, it must be if I don't want to change, I fear the change more than the suffering.
That's exactly right.
I think there's going to be greater misery in the change than what I'm going through right now.
And that is
all that's going on.
Exactly, and that is what we believe, and that's exactly what our ego wants, is telling us. Don't change because it could be worse. And remember all your other experiences of change in the past? Remember how horrible those were? And that's exactly. But the real reason the ego says don't change because it could be worse is not because it would be worse. It's because the ego knows that if you go for change as your problem-solving approach, that eventually you will get to the point where you will relinquish, not destroy, the ego to the light of the soul. And that's the real reason the ego tells you change is fearful, don't change, do nothing. The ego is the do-nothing answer. Not the I need do nothing, but the don't do anything except focus on other people's problems, focus on other people's egos, and then just placate your pain with pleasure or even pain. That's the ego's response to your conflict, to the pain. Do nothing,
So
meaning don't change.
You think, it seems to me time would be involved in this. Time always brings changes.
Yes, right.
And if I'm reacting and being the same in this as I was a year ago and 20 years ago,
Right, exactly.
I am in essence stopping time.
Yes, very nice. Yes, absolutely.
Nothing has changed.
Nice.
I just
Okay,
wondered,
so I'm just going to say that back to you because that's really beautiful. So I'm also resisting change because I think that's the way that's going to keep me from aging. Did I get that?
or something.
There's something like that. If I just keep myself in the past, then I won't age. I won't go into the future.
No progression, no.
No progression.
Whatever it is we fear down the road.
Yes.
Something must be there.
Yes. So a painful future could only be the result of refusing to change your mind now. This may feel painful now, but if I just take the attitude of do nothing and don't change, then it's going to be worse. I'm setting myself up. Wow. If you're tired of suffering with this problem, the only real change is going to come from learning your way out of it. That's it. You cannot rearrange stuff out. You can't rearrange yourself out of something, ever.
Would that be the way to motivate ourselves to want to change?
Exactly.
To know,
Yes.
unless I quit doing the past, my future is going to be just like it.
Exactly. Unless I do something totally different, unless I think something different than what I've obviously been believing, then I'm not going to make my way out of it. I may push it underground for a little while, but it will pop back up with a vengeance very soon, right? If my approach to it isn't, what do I need to change about my beliefs and what I'm thinking? And what new guide would I like to guide my thinking around this instead of my old guide? Okay. All right. Now he goes to talk about how to allow for change. How to change your mind, how to change your thinking and your beliefs. Here's how it goes. Okay. If you are willing to renounce the role of guardian of your thought system and open it to me, our teacher says. Oh, that's how you do change. Okay. And it must be true because I don't know what the hell that means. I don't understand that problem-solving approach. So if you are willing to do what? Renounce the role of guardian of your thought system, meaning what you're thinking now. I renounce the role of guardian of what I'm thinking now, which means I'm now going to open what I'm thinking now. I'm going to open what I'm believing now to my higher mind teacher. Now, that is how change occurs. Isn't that great? I don't have to change my mind myself. I don't have to figure out those new thoughts. Thank God. If I could do that, I wouldn't have a problem. So I love it. So change means I renounce the role of guardian. I'm not going to be protecting, I'm not going to be protecting greedily what I'm really thinking and what I'm really believing. You know how when you're talking to somebody and you can tell they're not really telling you what they're really thinking. You can tell. You're getting the story, right? Because they're guarding their thoughts. They're guarding their thought system. They are not telling you what they're really feeling and what they're really thinking in that moment. They're telling you their story, what they want you to think about them, right? And so we do the same thing. We guard what we're really thinking because we want to sound enlightened. And we want to sound like nice people who don't have murderous thoughts regularly. I don't want people to know that I just had a murderous thought about 5 seconds ago, and probably will 5 seconds later. I don't want people to know that I feel jealous, and that I feel competitive, and that I'm afraid most of the time, right? And that I believe that there's something wrong with me, and I believe that I'm inadequate, and I believe that something's wrong with me. I don't know what it is. We are jealously guarding our thought system, in particular about whatever thing we're really struggling around. And so whatever it is, whatever area of life you're struggling in or having a conflict in, that's the area of life where you really need to stop guarding what you are thinking and believing and get real. I believe I'm not enough right now. I believe I could lose right now. I believe that, I'm inadequate. I believe I'm incomplete. But saying it to your higher mind, that's what it means to open your mind. It means stop guarding your thoughts and your beliefs. That's what it means to get real and get honest with your higher mind. Then he says, I love it, he says, if you will do that, let me find myself, Where was I? Oh, yes. Okay. Oh, yes. If you do that, our teacher says, I will correct it very gently. If you will just open it up, stop protecting it and guarding it, then your higher mind will correct it. How? Gently. Don't forget that word. Gently. Gently. Not like us. We do not correct other people gently. It will correct those beliefs very gently, and in that way lead you back home. Doesn't that sound beautiful? Okay, so now I know what to do.
So it tells us what to do, but not necessarily how to do it. I mean, you said some of it by, don't be in denial about what you're really thinking.
Yes.
Let it come to a conscious level.
Yes.
And then what we say, how do you see this, Holy Spirit? Is that a form of relinquishing your being a guardian?
Well, what I hear it saying is just in a way confessing. Just in the act of going, this is what I'm thinking and feeling right now. This is it. Now I'm not, and for 1 second, I'm not hiding. I'm not hiding my ego. I'm not hiding my ego. Because listen, if you are not blissfully happy, you got some ego beliefs in there. You got some wrong, ugly, small, mean thoughts, beliefs going on. That's the only cause of struggle and conflict. But yet we don't want to admit it even though it's obvious. I mean, look, people who are completely blissed out, loving all the time don't go through that. You know, what you are right now, regularly. Right? So, we're trying to pretend that we don't think that way, even though we do, and our lives show it. And we're afraid to admit how we think and what we feel, even though it's obvious, because we have this belief that when we do that, our teacher is going to attack us and judge us. Why? Because that's what we do. That's what we do when people are honest with us. We go, oh my God, I cannot believe you just said that. Instead of going, thank you for telling me what you're really thinking. I really appreciate that. Thank you. So, thank you for loving me enough to not guard what you're really thinking. That's not the way we respond to people when they momentarily become real with us about their ego. And so we're terrified that if we do that to the higher mind, that we're going to receive what we've given. But the fear is deeper than that. The fear really is if I do that, that those ugly, small, mean, lacking beliefs will be corrected gently, and I'll go back to peace. And that's what my ego is really afraid of. That's why my ego really doesn't want to tell the truth. That's why I don't really want to tell the truth about my ego and its thoughts and its beliefs. Because I know if I do, it'll be gone. Wow. That my teacher will say, thank you, beautiful, thank you. All right, blink, corrected. So really there was nothing but an opening up, just a decision not to hide, just a decision not to hide. That's what I hear there. That's all that it took. A decision not to hide to my teacher, my internal teacher, my higher mind. It didn't say open up your thought system to someone else who is unconscious. It didn't say tell it to somebody who also is hiding their ego. It's different. It's opening up to your internal teacher.
So this was an example. I was trying to correct myself. You're saying just own it.
Yes.
Let Holy Spirit take care of the rest.
Yes. And I like the word open it. Just open it. It's almost like we're like keeping a lid on it. We're guarding it. We're like, and it just open it. Just open it. Isn't that nice? Okay. And our teacher here is giving us some very direct instructions for us. Because remember, our teacher told us a few minutes ago, and then will tell us again. Our teacher is telling us in here, I need you. I need you. I need you. I need you. I need, in the end of the section, he says, I need teachers I need devoted teachers who are committed to healing their minds. I need devoted teachers who share my aim of healing the mind. I need them. And I was reading earlier in the book where he was talking about the speed up that's happening. And he's talking about the speed up, and he's saying, I would give you more time to play around with your illusions, even though they're hurting you. I would have more patience and let you just play with them and hurt yourself. But I have to take away those scissors, metaphorically speaking, that you're using to hurt yourself because of the speed up. And that's in the original, but not the edited. And I was like, what is up with that? And what I'm hearing is this theme, like, sorry, we don't have enough time for me to let you leave your mind unguarded. Sorry, I need you. I need devoted teachers who share my aim of healing the mind, and I need you now. And so I need you to focus on teaching and learning now. And so I want you to know that teaching and learning are going to be your greatest strengths right now. They're your greatest strengths because why? Because it's the world's greatest need. So if you focus on teaching and learning, guess what? You will be employed. You will be used. You will be supported. You will be sustained by the universe, by God, who, for some reason, has an interest in us waking up and being a happy, healthy planet. Wow. So I just really just feel this urgency, you know, and I've been hearing that in the last few chapters, this urgency. I need you, I need you, I need you. Stop wasting so much time refusing to change your mind and accept the healing. You know, maybe you think you can afford that time, but the planet can't. You know, the planet can't. You really can't afford that time either, right? We are acting like we've got all this time to change our mind. I got time. I don't need to look at my ego today. I don't need to bring some change of thought into that problem. I got plenty of time. I'm fine. I can just watch a little more TV. I can just focus a little bit more on someone else's problems. I got plenty of time. That is the way we act, right? We're very, very, very tolerant with mind wandering and just not being about what we're here for, which is accepting the healing of our minds so that we can be used for the healing of the planet. You know, we're acting like we got plenty of time, but we're acting like we can afford that time, but that's not what I'm hearing. That's not the message I'm getting. So I'm asking for change in whatever belief I have that's making me very tolerant of refusing to change my mind. Very tolerant of, you know, just status quo thinking. Instead of going, whoa, wait, whoa, bring it back. What was that? What was that? Okay, whoa, what is it that I'm telling myself about this? Whoa, okay, bring it back. And then bringing it to my higher mind and going, check this one out. Wow, check that one out. Right? That's what I want to be doing more often. And that's what I'm asking for.
That urgency you speak of recognizes the laws of the universe. In other words, I can't learn or change in the past or in the future. I can only do it now.
Exactly.
So
That's exactly right.
If you don't do it now, there is no other time that can be done.
Exactly. And it's the only hope for your happiness, changing your mind, and it's also the only hope of the planet. You know, the planet's not going to change through somebody else. You know, it's our only hope, changing our mind, which is the same thing as saying learning, which really is the same as teaching, because all that you learn is what you're going to be demonstrating. All right, so then our teacher goes on to teach us more about ourselves as teachers and learners. He says, every good teacher hopes to give their students so much of their own thinking that the student will one day no longer need them. This is the one real goal of the parent, teacher, and therapist. Now, in the edited edition, it doesn't say parent, teacher, and therapist. Okay? I think it may say therapist. So the one real goal of parent, teacher, or therapist is what? To give your child, pupil, patient, or whatever, all of your thinking, so much of your own thinking that your child or your pupil or your patient no longer needs you. Wow, that's the real goal, the healed goal of the good teacher. Also the good parent. I'm going to like to give my child so much of my own thinking that my child one day no longer needs me. Okay? That's the one real goal of the good parent, good teacher, and good therapist. Now, this goal will not be achieved by those who believe that they will lose their child or pupil or patient if they succeed in that. Okay? If I believe that when I give so much of what I think to my child or my pupil or my patient that they'll no longer, that they don't need me and I'll lose them, then I do not want that real goal. I will not be interested in that being that kind of teacher. You know? Now the same thing is saying, I'm afraid that if I give all of my love to this person, they will no longer need me because they'll have all of my love. I can't just give all of it in every instant. I can't just give it all to all. If I give all my love to this person, they will no longer need me, and then I will lose them. Okay? Same thing as saying, you know, that's interesting that is our fear, but it's also the one real goal of a good teacher, a good therapist, a good healer, and a good parent. Wow, interesting. And it's impossible to convince the ego that you won't lose if you give all of your learning to your loved one or your child or your pupil, because that goes against all of the ego's laws. But remember that laws are set up to protect the continuity of the system in which the lawmaker believes. Okay. All right. Okay. Any questions or comments so far about that?
Is that, after we gave them all of our thinking, is that where the teacher pupil reverses? Because now they have all of what we know, plus what all their other teachers gave them, so now we can become the learner from them.
Yes, yes.
Until we get that, and it just goes back and forth type of thing?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, exactly. And then what I'm seeing right now is the connection with the standing guard over my own thinking. You know, it's I don't want to give all of my thinking to, let's say, for instance, my child. I don't want to share all of my thinking. Yes, I have an ego. This is what it tells me. This is what it's telling me right now. And this is what I'm hearing my teacher tell me. I don't want to give all of my thinking. Because if you knew that I had ego thoughts as well as real thoughts, then my child or my pupil may go, well, she don't know the truth either. I don't need her. She got an ego too, right? So I just saw the connection with, you know, not teaching everything I know, not giving all my thinking. Is another way of me saying, I'm not going to tell you everything I'm thinking. Which is the same as saying, I can't tell you all the answers I'm receiving. You know, to give all my learning to my child means I tell you about my ego, and I also tell you about the answers and the healing that I've received around that. But I'm afraid to tell you everything, because then, you know, I'll lose you. You know, you won't respect me anymore. Or I won't need you. She got an ego too, right? That's part of our fear about giving our children, our pupils, and our patients all of our thinking.
I've noticed this in two areas of my life. I've got a lot of employees, and I try to teach them everything that I know.
Yes.
And at some point, they teach me.
Yes.
After. And along the way. And that is much easier than with my kids, because I want to teach them everything I think and know. Mm-hmm. And I feel very unsettled when they don't think like me.
Yes, no doubt.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that what we're hearing is that the real reason is not that we're afraid of them not thinking like us, is that according to this, we're afraid that eventually they just won't need us, which to us translates into loss. If you don't need me anymore, then you will leave me and I will lose you. And because of that, I stand guard over my thought system.
It's interesting to me that the three are the parent, the teacher, the therapist.
Yes.
And so my ears perked up. But the ego has no desire to die. And so sustainability from the ego's perspective is based on need.
Right.
If you need me, I can't die.
That's right.
And so If I give everything to you,
That's right.
I am no longer sustainable, and that's equitable to dying.
Exactly.
And so I can't give you all my truth, I have to copyright it.
Exactly. And I can't give you all my love either.
Right.
Because then you won't have any need for me, and then you'll just don't go away. I'll lose you.
You go away, I go away.
Yeah, exactly. And if you go away, I go away. Exactly. Exactly.
And that gets really gross.
And yes, what'd you say?
That gets really gross.
Yes, it does. Yes. Says a man who looks like he knows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm like, because it's like you're saying it like that's a bad thing, to need something. Like in my opinion, to need something that's bad. Like if you like, because it means if you were needing that thing, it means you're attached to something within that thing you need. So in order to love something completely, you gotta let it do its own thing, in my opinion.
Yeah,
So to
exactly.
need it like that is
Mhm.
not good.
Yeah, the ego-oriented teacher or parent has a need to be needed,
Right.
you know, and then but the healed parent and teacher and therapist doesn't need to be needed to feel their own sense of worth, you know. And for a while, the child and the pupil and the patient do need a teacher because their own thinking is confused, right? They need a new light, they need a new thought. But the good teacher's goal is not to foster need, whether in themselves or in them, in someone else. And then it goes on to talk about how the ego-oriented teacher or parent needs what they're needing something from their pupil or child or patient in order to feel good about themselves.
Oh, so you're saying like the need to have an ego, to eradicate that slowly would be the same as to teach a child to slowly not need you
Exactly,
anymore.
exactly, exactly. And it says it's natural for your ego to try to protect itself once you've made your ego, but it's not natural for you to want to obey your ego's laws unless you believe in the ego's laws. The ego cannot make this choice because of the nature of the ego's origin, but you can make that choice because of the nature of your origin. Egos can clash in any situation, but souls cannot clash at all. And if you perceive a teacher as merely a, quote, larger ego, you will be afraid, because to enlarge an ego is to increase separation anxiety. And so our teacher says, I will teach with you and I will live with you if you will think with me. But my goal, our teacher says, will always be to absolve you finally from the need for a teacher. Nice. That's the kind of teacher that we want to be learning from, whose goal is to absolve. I'll teach with you. I'll even live with you. Awesome. I'll teach with you, I will live with you if you will think with me. So our teacher isn't saying, act like me. Our teacher isn't even saying, think like me. Our teacher is saying, if you will think with me. Isn't that interesting? What does it mean to think with your teacher?
You're an equal.
Yeah, exactly. And for starters, don't keep your thoughts to yourself. You know, share your thoughts.
Mine now.
Yeah, exactly. Share your thoughts. You know, act like your teacher is real, is within you, is your best friend, and, you know, wants to hear everything you're thinking. You know, act like your teacher is your internal best friend whom you can communicate with about everything without fear. That's what it means to me to think with. This is what I'm feeling and thinking, teacher, and it hurts. What's your perception? What's another way of looking at this? And then listening as your teacher goes, oh, thank you for not hiding that from me. How about looking at it like this? Have you thought about that? That's what it means to think with your teacher. Now notice it didn't even say think like. He didn't say think like me. He said think with me. You know, he says I'll live with you. I will teach with you if you will think with me. He said I will do that. But my goal will always be to free you from me. And when was the last time you heard somebody say that to you? I'm going to love you so good, I'm going to free you from me.
Till you no longer do.
Never.
Does that mean our teacher doesn't really go anywhere? It's just we have reached that point where we don't see us and our teachers separate anymore.
Exactly.
We have totally joined.
Exactly. Exactly. That's right.
System.
I mean, the truth is that the Course does say that whatever name you give your teacher, you know, higher mind, Holy Spirit, Jesus, Buddha, Krishna, whatever name you give that, it's simply a representation or a symbol of you, you know, but it has to take this seemingly separate illusionary appearance because right now you don't think it's you. Right now you think you're separate, and so it seems to come to you in a separate voice, right? It seems to come in a different voice or a different personality, but really it's you, you know. And eventually we go, oh yeah, that is me, right? And that's when our teacher has accomplished its goal of giving you so much of its thinking that you don't need it. You don't need to say, hey, I need another correct perception, because you have correct perception. The goal of a good teacher or parent is to give you such a true foundation of thinking that your own thoughts can set you free. Imagine that. Imagine that. But my own thoughts, my own spontaneous, original thoughts set me free. I don't have to reach, I don't have to ask for higher mind's thoughts. My own thoughts are awesome. I just wake up and I think beautiful thoughts. Yeah. Well, that's the goal of your teacher. That's the goal of your higher mind teacher. You know, to give you, but our teacher can't do that if you won't think with it. And you won't think with it if you're not going to even be honest about what you are thinking now while you're suffering. Wow. So that's the reason why our teacher is saying, renounce the role of guardian of what you're thinking. Renounce the role. Open what you're thinking. Open your thought system and belief system to me, and I will gently correct it and lead you back to peace. Isn't that beautiful? It doesn't get any more loving than that, does it? Doesn't get any more loving than that. That's how change occurs. That's what real learning means. That's how real learning occurs. That's how real change occurs. Wow. All right. Sounds good, huh? Now, he says, absolving you from the need, absolving others from the need of you. Just even saying that, it's like I can't even it's like hard to say. I'm going to absolve you of your need. I don't want you to need me anymore. Well, this is the opposite of the ego-oriented teacher's goal. Okay, now he's going to talk about us. And who are we? The ego-oriented teacher. We are the ego-oriented parent, the ego-oriented teacher, and the ego-oriented therapist. Okay? How is that? Well, see if you recognize this. The ego-oriented parent, teacher, or therapist, that person is concerned with the effect of their ego on other people's egos and interprets the interaction of the egos as a means of ego preservation. That's what an ego-oriented teacher or healer or parent is about. Okay? What is it? I'm just concerned with how I'm affecting your ego. You know, is it working? Is the truth I'm giving you working? I'd like to see. Did you take my advice? What'd you do with it? The ego-oriented teacher is concerned about whether they have affected the ego of the pupil or the child or the patient. Okay? And the reason that they're doing that is because the ego-oriented teacher is interpreting their work according to how they've affected their pupil or their child. Wow. In other words, you better make me look good.
Their perception of how they.
Exactly. Exactly. My interpretation. That's the ego-oriented teacher's goal. Not to just give you so much that you don't need me anymore, but the ego-oriented teacher's goal is to have their pupil, child, patient, friend, whatever, make me look good. Assert my worth. And if you don't take what I give you and make some improvement and make a real change, well, what's wrong with you?
Isn't that like that person trying to play God and exerting that control over you?
Yes. That is that person, that is, it's a selfish motivation for teaching.
Right.
It's not a real love motivation for teaching. It's, I'm teaching, I'm helping, I'm loving so that you can make me look good and give me the worth that I don't feel like I have. That's an ego-oriented teacher. Wow. I'm giving you this love to make me feel better about myself. I'm giving this teaching to make me feel better about myself because I don't feel worthy. And so I'm looking for what you do, your behavior, to show how smart I am.
So it's the ego is always looking for self-recognition.
Exactly. The ego is, he says, the ego's always trying to exploit all situations and relationships into forms of praise for itself. All. Even the ones where it's like seemingly very benevolent. I'm giving you my wisdom, my child. I'm going to give you this charity, my friend. The ego-oriented teacher is always trying to exploit all situations and relationships into forms of praise for itself. Wow. Now, we know that we are ego-oriented teachers and givers. Well, how do we know? Because if the people we give our gifts to do not respond in the way that we think they should, like, oh, hail, oh, praise to you all the time, then we will take it back, won't we? That's how we know that we have an ego-oriented goal for giving and teaching and loving.
Or if we're mad that we gave it.
What'd you say?
Or if we're mad that we gave it afterwards.
Yes, exactly. That's how you know that the reason you gave was because you were trying to exploit that situation or relationship into a form of praise for yourself.
Right.
You wanted someone to go, you're so incredible.
You expect.
You're so amazing. And when they don't go, you're so amazing, or they go, thanks, that's great, don't need you anymore, and you never see them again, we're like, oh, what's wrong with them? That's mean.
Or they go teach somebody else what you taught them and you perceive them as them being the author of it.
Yes, exactly. I said that to you first. I said that to them 1,000,000 times, and then they were like, resistant, and then I see them telling it to someone else. Okay, so yeah, you're like, yeah, go. You know, and the truth is that if they took what you gave them, left, and gave it to someone else, you did your job.
Right.
Yeah, we're perfect.
Yeah, you did your job, you know. And you know when you've given something really loving to somebody, and then you never see them again? Anybody ever had that experience? I gave them the best I had to give in that moment. I never saw them again. Well, now the reinterpretation of that is that you did good. You did good. You fulfilled your function in that moment. You were a good teacher because you gave them so much of yourself in that moment that they didn't need you anymore. You know, and that's not a loss. It's a good job. It's a job well done. Now that's a new interpretation, wouldn't you say? Because my ego is like, they took my love and ran away with it and gave it to someone else. That's the way my ego would have me interpret it, because I'm an ego-oriented teacher. I'm an ego-oriented lover. That's how I know. But now I have a new interpretation, which is, wow, I taught them so much that they didn't even need me anymore. Nicely done. That's my new interpretation instead of a grievance.
Wow.
So we should realize, don't sweat it, there's always plenty of work for that good of a teacher.
Absolutely. Exactly. Thank you. Exactly. Don't perceive it as a loss. Oh my God, if I'm a really good teacher, I'm not going to have any more, friends or pupils or clients, But you're right, Jeff. Take heart. There's plenty of people who need your love, need your truth. Exactly.
Gotta flunk a few people off.
Just to keep them. I'm flunking you just so I can keep you. All right. Now, our teacher says, now, I wouldn't be able to devote myself to teaching if I believed like that. Right. If our teacher was like seeing his worth as determined by how well we learned his lesson, oh my God, our teacher would be like, I'm out of here. I'm sorry. If our teacher believed like that about us, our teacher would have been out of here a long time ago. If our teacher was like, okay, let's see what you learned. Did you get all that? Let me see. Right? He says, our teacher says, I would not be able to devote myself to teaching if I believed that, and you will not be a devoted teacher as long as you maintain it. And then our teacher says, I am constantly being perceived as a teacher, either to be exalted or rejected, but I do not accept either perception of myself. Wow. Our teacher is so cool that our teacher's like, I don't accept exaltation or rejection. I'm not worried about that. I don't accept either. Then he says, and so basically, that's what we are going to have to get to in order to be good teachers. Okay, to be a good teacher means this. When people are like exalting me, I'm like, oh, thank you, that's cool, but I don't take it personal. And when they're rejecting me, I don't take it personal. When they're worshiping me, putting me up on a pedestal, I don't take that personal. It doesn't affect me. And when they're rejecting me and they want to crucify me, I don't take that personal. I don't take it personal at all. Because I know I'm equal, says our teacher. And so that's where we're going to get to as well. We're not going to be affected when people are worshiping us. We're also not going to be affected when people reject us. Now, wouldn't that be nice? Doesn't that sound great?
So what really goes on there when we get exalted or rejected? That they believe in us, or they wouldn't do either. So we don't think we're real if we need their belief in us.
That's exactly right.
So you need to accept your own reality. At that point, you're not worried about that other
Exactly.
stuff, affirming it.
Exactly, and that's why the next line is exactly that. What you need to know as a teacher, and what you need to know as the teacher that you are, your worth is not established by your teaching or your learning. That's the next thing you need to know. You need to get to the place where you give your learning freely, where you give your love with a real goal, which is to give so much in that moment fully that they no longer need you. Okay? And the way that you will get to the point where you're not concerned whether they're worshiping you or rejecting you is because you realize that your worth isn't established by what you give them. Your worth isn't established by what you give them. Your worth isn't established by how you heal them or not. Your worth isn't established by what you teach them. Your worth was established by God. Now, as long as you dispute this fact, your worth is established by God, not by how well you teach, not by how well you learn. Your worth is established by God. As long as you dispute that, then everything you do will be fearful. As long as you're disputing the fact that, hey, your worth is established by God, not what you do, then everything you do will be fearful. So
Part
if,
of that is also that every student-teacher, teacher-student exchange, there is no hierarchy, it's a 50-50 co-creation.
exactly,
It's not like teacher is on a higher pedestal than the student.
exactly.
It's an exchange.
Exactly. And that's why the good teacher isn't looking to be exalted. They aren't looking to be different. They're just looking to give so much of what they have that they're no longer needed. Okay, so the ego,
This is an exchange too. Like having an end is like kind of it's the end of an exchange. You know, it's over. It's like we now exchange what we need to, and
right.
you can now go and move that wherever else in
Exactly.
the universe it needs to go.
And that's exactly what the Course says is the reason why some relationships that have been fairly intense in nature, that appear to separate after a fairly intense time, he says that's the reason why. The reason why relationships that have been fairly intense for some time end is because they've learned all that they could learn and teach from each other at that time. And that every relationship is a teaching-learning situation where we're being called to teach and learn and to be teachers and learners from each other. And that when that teaching-learning has been completed, then usually, often, that's when it appears to end. You know, so you're right. You know, where our ego interprets that as loss, it really, according to the Course, to this teacher, means that we've done a good job. You know, we've given them what they need to no longer need us, and they've given us what we need to the point where we don't need them.
Now our next phase of growth.
Exactly. Now that's a totally different interpretation of a breakup. Wouldn't you say?
I interpret it like that, but
Yeah, I
I'd
know. Me neither.
like to.
Yeah, until now. Thank you.
Of
Yeah.
the exchange.
Yes, exactly. We are only appearing to separate. Why? Not because there was a failure, but because we've learned all that we needed to learn from each other at this time. Now that's the truth, and that's a much, much more loving interpretation than we tend to have.
So following on that same vein, we probably will only be in a relationship where we've learned everything there is to learn if a lot of that relationship is based on ego. Because if it's a holy relationship, we are both constantly learning
That's right. And teaching.
and teaching.
Exactly.
And so it's perpetual.
That's right. Exactly. And eventually you would go beyond teaching and learning to co-creating. So that we're not here to get lessons that we haven't learned up till now. And we're not there to get any new learning from them, but now we're together to co-create.
So it's an inspirational channel of God that expands its vibration
Exactly.
through the joining of those.
Exactly. Instead of being in it to try to learn something and get something that I haven't gotten yet, that I'm resistant to getting. You know, that's totally different. You know, it's like, bang, I'm trying to learn this again. Bang, I'm trying to learn. Bang, I'm trying to learn it again, but resisting. You know, you go beyond that to just co-creating, you know, which is not a teaching and learning. It's not so much of an exchange anymore.
Right.
It's just we receive directly together and we give together.
You become a factory, a powerhouse.
Yes, exactly. Instead of a remedial kindergarten class,
Right.
where you're like, bang, ow, that hurt. Oh, no, you did it first. You know.
That sounds all right.
I know. Does that sound familiar? Anybody had a relationship like a remedial kindergarten class?
I know some adults like that.
Who's not in kindergarten also?
My dad's caregivers. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's basically what we do. It's just another name for, you know, fighting and fussing and, you know, what we often do in our relationships. Arguing, fussing, fighting, competing, you know. that's still having to learn something and still needing to learn something and still needing to teach something, right? And you will stay in that or something like it until you finally learned. And then once you've learned, because you have renounced being the role of guardian of your own thought system, then you will graduate to co-creating instead of trying to fix each other, and trying to fix each other, and trying to fix each other, trying to fix the relationship, and trying to fix them, and trying to fix yourself, and they're trying to fix you. Anybody recognize that? Okay. So I would like to renounce the role of guardian of my thought system around relationships. And would you be willing to join with me on that? So that idea can be strengthened in my mind? Okay. I'd also like to renounce the role of guardian of my thoughts around my body and my health. And I'd also like to renounce the role of guardian of my thoughts around money. And I'd also like to renounce the role of guardian about being here on this planet, this seemingly scary planet. And so that my teacher can gently correct my old belief system and bring me back home. Anybody willing to join me in that goal?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right on. Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments before we close up? We're going to stop here, and then next week we're going to pick up right back on this paragraph.
I just have one comment. And I really like the discussion about the example of the relationships and the two different ways to be in relationships, the creation versus fixing
Yes.
and learning, the school of hard knocks.
Yes.
And what I'm seeing is that it's a more microscopic example of heaven extending as opposed to our universe projecting.
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly. The old paradigm of relationship is just exchanging projections. And the new paradigm is we open up our thought system to the higher mind together. Imagine that. And receive correction for our thoughts and beliefs together. And then which is learning, right? That's what learning means. And then together we teach it. So I open up my mind, my thoughts for change so that I can learn, and then I extend it to others in a free way, not in a needy way, not in a needy get way, but I extend it freely, and then we do that in our relationship too. Yeah, thank you for that. Anything else? Any other questions or comments? Okay, so then let's do our integration meditation. And in our integration meditation, we take what we've heard and apply it, and we use it. So, thank you for your financial expressions of appreciation. Thank you. I thank you. The Miracle Center thanks you. And don't forget to check out my website, AnnaKujawa.com, to learn more about my holistic counseling practice, Miracle Psychotherapeutics. AnnaKujawa.com. All right. So now I will fall off the chair for your entertainment. So make sure you're awake. See, I am an ego-oriented teacher here. Okay, so now I want you to just close your eyes and just tune in to how you feel right now. How does it feel to have heard these ideas today? Beautiful. Now I want you to bring to your awareness an area of life that you have been struggling with in the last few days or weeks, or just a pattern that you struggle with consistently, what you might call a problem or a challenge, current. And I want you to imagine this challenge, this conflict. I want you to see it out in front of you as if it's an externalized object that you can look at. See what it looks like. And then I want you to notice how you typically feel around this situation or relationship or problem. And I want you to take note of how this problem feels to you, honestly. What are the honest emotions that you experience relative to this, without trying to be enlightened? And then I want you to do an honest inventory, brief honest inventory about your thoughts and your beliefs that have to be there for you to be struggling in this way with this problem so consistently. So we're doing an inventory. And the inventory question is this: what kind of thoughts and beliefs would I have to have this kind of problem? And what kind of beliefs is this problem revealing to me that I haven't been willing to look at because I've been trying to hide it from myself and not change? What beliefs is this problem revealing to me that I haven't been wanting to look at and be honest about? Don't forget to breathe it out. Don't forget to breathe. And what other beliefs must you hold for this problem to be seeming so real to you, and for you to be so afraid of it, so angry about it? I must believe, fill in the blank. I must believe I, fill in the blank. I must believe relationships, fill in the blank. I must believe all people, fill in the blank. And I must believe about myself, fill in the blank. Beautiful. And now I want you in your mind's eye to imagine yourself opening up your beliefs around this topic to your internal teacher, who is real and there. Open it up to your teacher, saying, "Teacher, this is what I believe about this. This is what my ego is telling me about this. This is what my ego believes about this. This is what my ego believes about men. This is what my ego believes about people. This is what my ego believes about women. This is what my ego believes about me. And open it up. And say to your teacher, I now renounce the role of guardian of what I'm believing about this. In this holy instant, I will not stand guard over what I must be believing for this to have occurred. And I ask you, teacher, to gently correct these beliefs. Gently correct these thoughts. And take me home, back to peace, back to the heaven of lasting peace. And then listen for your teacher's gentle corrections. Feel for them and listen for them. Listen for your teacher's gentle corrections. They're always right there, just behind getting honest with yourself, with your teacher. And I want you to breathe that in. Breathe in the feeling of your teacher's gentle corrections. Take a breath. And then, still beholding this situation in your mind's eye, I want you to look at it and see how it looks different to you right now. And now I want you to tell yourself the truth, the real truth about it. And it is this: my worth is established by God, not this situation, not how good it is, not how bad it is. My worth is established by God, not this, not that, not anything but God. And I want you to breathe in that fact about yourself, that gentle correction. And tell yourself, this situation doesn't establish my worth. Whether I did good or I did bad, or I responded lovingly or I didn't respond lovingly. My worth is established by God, not this situation. And for just a moment, breathe in that real worth, that worth fact. Breathe it in. to see if just for one moment you can feel the truth of that fact. My worth is established by God. And you say that thought as a blessing. You speak over and onto this situation. It's like you're speaking the truth over it and blessing it with the truth. My worth is established by God. Not this, not that, not them. Just breathe that in. Beautiful. Beautiful. All right, you guys, nicely done. Give it up for yourselves. Oh my God, actually tolerated some change tonight on a Monday night. It's a miracle. Thank you guys. I appreciate you guys for being here. Thank you for watching out there in YouTube land. See you next time I see you.